Tonight is a very special night, not just because we're leading up to Yutes Kislev and concert we'll experience together later tonight in Yirtzeh Hashem, and not just because we have this parent and son, family and son learning shir, but because this particular shir is being given by the person who is responsible not just for the existence of this program, these shiurim, but for the leadership program as a whole. And when we talk about leadership, it's not just learning the skills that go into being a leader, it's also learning about the persona and having models that represent what leadership is about. And Baruch Hashem, we're very lucky here at Yeshivat Hakotel to have such a model who has been inspiring, continues inspiring future leaders, Rabbi Cutler. That's why it's very fitting and very special that tonight he is giving this leadership shir, and I hope that his model will continue to inspire you, your families, and all of Am Yisrael and Yirtzeh Hashem and Shekos to Rav Cutler.
Okay, after the introduction, this is, thank God it's not a eulogy. We're going to get connected to Nichum Avelim and Bikkur Cholim, but first we want to thank the Cutler family who sponsored this tremendous dinner that people are having, and Baruch Hashem, with the help of Ami Hill and Jeremy Pivko, where we have almost 40 guys learning with their parents and grandparents. Ken Yerbu, Bezrat Hashem. We're happy to have some of the parents actually here on this Thanksgiving weekend. And so we're learning for the Refuah Shlema of the grandmother of Mrs. Glatter, Esther Chaya Bas Perel, and also for the Refuah Shlema of all the other Psuim. The subject for this evening is Bikkur Cholim and the concept of visiting the sick. And the sources that were sent to you, we're going to deal with three major topics. Number one is we're going to go through the sources and see that it comes up in different sugyas, and to understand what is the source behind Mitzvah Bikkur Cholim. We're going to get to the essence of the Mitzvah Bikkur Cholim. Yeah, please. To the essence of the Mitzvah Bikkur Cholim. Then I think a lot of people will just say, is it enough? Is it enough just to say, please feel better? Or is there something more to the Mitzvah Bikkur Cholim? Within that, we'll see the contrast of if I have to choose between the mitzvah, this will be the last part of this year, whether I have to choose between Bikkur Cholim versus Nichum Avelim. Which one should take precedence? The machlokas between the Rambam and Rabaz that some of you saw, and understanding the machloket behind it. In the middle part, please God, we will discuss within the mitzvah of Bikkur Cholim some of the gemaras that happens from it, the modern day question, which is, if I am 6,000 miles away and my son is sick in Yeshivat Hakotel, can I be yotzei my mitzvah Bikkur Cholim through FaceTime or not? Am I allowed to be yotzei the mitzvah? And that was a more modern question that Rav Moshe Feinstein was asked by a telephone. We're upping the ante for up FaceTime. So the source is in front of you. The first question was, is this actually a rabbinic mitzvah or is it a biblical mitzvah? Is it Doraisa or the Rabban? The first source in front of you is the Gemara in Sota on Daf Yud Daled Amud Aleph, which we saw a couple of weeks ago from Vayera Elav Hashem Belonei Mamrei V'hu Yoshev Petach Ha'ol Kechol Mayom. That we know that the Gemara starts out, Daf Yomi passed it a little while ago, if I'm not mistaken, that Amar Rabbi Bar Chanina, Mai Dichtiv Acharei Hashem Elokechem Terechu. How do we imitate God? How do we follow God? Is it possible to follow God? V'chi Efshar Lo La'adam La'aloch Achar Shechina. Is it possible to go after the Shechina? Doesn't the Torah say that God is an all-consuming fire? Ki Ish Hashem Elokecha Ish Ochlahu. But rather, La'aloch Achar Midotav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What we call imitatio Dei, to imitate Hashem. Mahu Malbish Arumim, as the pasuk says, Vayas Hashem Elokim la'adam u'lishto kot noror vayalbishem by Adam Arishon. So to you have to clothe it naked. Hakadosh Baruch Hu is mivaker cholim. Tichtiv vayera elav Hashem belonei mamrei. Afata baker cholim. So we have this concept that we see that just like God visited the sick, so do we have to visit the sick. That's the first source in what you saw in the Gemara in Sota. The second source was a Gemara in Bava Metzia and Daf Lamed, quoting from Parshas Yisro, that said what? That we know Yitro, the father-in-law, comes and gives sagacious advice to his son-in-law Moshe. And what does he say? You're doing too much. Too much on your shoulders. And therefore, what do you have to do? To be able to pick the leaders, not only do they have to not be with justice, but let me give you some advice. And he quotes a pasuk in Shemot Perek Yochet. It says as follows. Atashma b'koli iyatzecha. Come listen to my advice. V'yeh Elohim imach. God will be with you. Heyeh ata la'am mul Elohim ve'veit ata dvarim alei Elohim. V'izharta etem, you should warn them. Et hachukim, your statutes, et hatorot. V'odata lahem, you should inform them the derech, the path yelchu ba, v'tamaseh asher yasu. And here, Chazal and Masechet Bava Metzia darshins, which you saw in the second source in front of you, that each one of these things were different. You should teach them haderech is gemilut chasadim, and yelchu is what? It's Bikkur Cholim. Where do they see that? But it's important to know that yelchu in the plural, the derech that you're going, is Bikkur Cholim. The third source in front of you was the Gemara Nedarim, that Rish Lakish had said remez, a hint to Bikkur Cholim min haTorah minayin. And he quotes an interesting pasuk also, which was very difficult to understand this remez, dealing with Moshe Rabbeinu and who? Who's he dealing with? Am Yisrael, that they're claiming maybe what? You're making this all up. He says, I'm not making it all up. And what does he say? He says, Im kemot kol adam yimutuna ela ufkudat kol adam. Then it's what? Lo Hashem milibi. Kilo, it was not milibi. If these people will die a normal death, then I'm not making it up. But if what happens, if the ground opens up in Bria, Yivra Hashem, then you'll know that it was all from God. Therefore what? Says the Gemara there, remez, the Bikkur Cholim min haTorah, the remez is, Im kemot kol adam yimutuna ela, if they will die. But the Gemara says, which is what? Shehem cholim, lav dafka dying. It's very difficult in the Pshat, and that's why it's called remez. Shehem what? Shehem cholin umutalin barisatan. They're sick. And what does the language of kudat kol adam mean? It means visit. The Torah Tamimi here, not on your sources, says that it comes from the language of poked, to visit. Poked avot, but he quotes from the Shulchan Aruch. Very interesting, not nowadays. But there was a halacha in Shulchan Aruch and Shin Tzadik Daled that says that you would go to the Beis HaKvaros and you would be poked for 3 days. Maybe they're alive. They would put it in kuchin. If anybody ever watched CSI before, they would put it in kuchin, which is in these what are they called? Megirot. They're put in caves and they're checking if it's alive. Nowadays we don't do that. But the idea was, and that's the remez of poked, that what? You visited sick to remez. Now, if I ask you, why do I need these three sources? What's the nafkamina? 2 questions. Number 1, somebody will come over here, Justin, you have to help with the computer so the parents can see you, Justin, Mr. Son of the, whatever, you know what I mean. The brother who got engaged, Baruch Hashem. Now, the question is it midoraisa or midorabbanan? So what would you say from these 3 sources? Is this a mitzvah doraisa to visit the sick, or is it the rabbanan? Answer? Now, the right answer is it depends. It always depends. Which means what? Which ones are for sure the rabbanan? What would you say, Mr. Schwartz? Which one's for sure the rabbanan? You want to say the first one. I would say I disagree with that one. The last one. You want to say the word remez. So that is actually a major question. Where it says remez the Bikkur Cholim min haTorah minayin. So remez, the question is remez meaning what? It's a hint, but it's really midrabanan. It's a machlokas rishonim how to read the word remez. Is remez, the rush there in Maseches Nedarim says that it's actually limud gomor, or is remez just an asmachta midrabanan? There's a beautiful pshita of the Rambam, the Maritz Chias brings down that when it says the word remez in the Gemara, it's actually halacha Moshe Sinai. Not for now, but fascinating. Okay? But, so that's a machlokas with a remez. How about the asher yelchuba? That clearly, if you would ask me, would be an asmachta midrabanan. And when the Rambam, which are the sources I gave you, that he had said that what? That imitacho day from the Ribbon Shalom, that seems to be midoraisa. And so it's a machloket in the Monei HaMitzvos, whether it's doraisa or the Rabbanan. So it's not just pedantic, the concept of whether it's actually listed as one of the Monei HaMitzvos. But more than that, the question is going to be what we learn from the mitzvah based on the sources itself. Yes?
The question there is all under the umbrella of U.S. and Southern.
So that idea, first of all, not 100% correct, because the Gemara has two different words that says one is Gmilus Chasadim, and the next word is Bikkur Cholim. And now we're going to get back to, is there a difference between Bikkur Cholim and Gmilus Chasadim? You with me? Meaning it's not under that all, which we would think, it's all under big one rubric category called Gmilus Chasadim. We'll see that's going to be a machlokes as we move along between Rav Moshe Feinstein and Rav Asher Weiss. Okay? Now, so we see that it could be Doraisa, Derabanan. Normally the nafkamina between Doraisa and Derabanan is whether it's a suffix. Okay, now I'm not so sure here, but we deal with suffix. But if we move ahead, there's a Gemara that we printed up for you in English also to get into the teeth of the sugya. And within that, before we even get into the Gemara, I have the sources in front of you, the She'otot of Rav Achai Gaon. The She'otot of Rav Achai Gaon, it says something very strange. And what he says is that when you do Bikkur Cholim,
Okay, we're back. Come back. Just watch out for the lag. I don't know. No.
okay, so we're back to the story. We're back to the story. The story says, that what does it mean, Ein Lo Shir? The Gemara says two important pieces. Number one, we've talked about that it could be from the first source that it's Doraisa, versus the other two sources, they're Rabban. The second thing we mentioned, just to come back for those people online now, Shilta Rav Achai going that, interestingly, 2 people should be going visiting sick. Number 3 now comes that Abaye says, you know what it means, Ein Lo Shir? It teaches me, Afilu Gadol Eitzel Katan. Even a Gadol should go visit a Katan. Rabbi says even 100 times in a day, we're not going to get into that. So that's going to be the third point we're going to get to. What is this chiddush that even a Gadol has to visit a Katan? Now let's go story time. The story time says that at the end of Lamed Tesem Beis in Daf Mem Manal, it says Rabbi Chalbo got sick. Cholash. Nafak Achriz Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana screamed out, made the announcement. Rav Chalbo Bayish. The Rishonim talk about the difference of what it means, the difference between Ba'ish or Chala, that it got really sick. What happened? Rav Chalbo Bayish, but lo Ika, right? The Ka'asi, but nobody came. So Amar Lahu, he said, no. He said, lo Ika the Ka'asi. Lo Kachaya Maisa. Isn't this the Maisa? Betalmid Echo Mitamid Rabbi Akiva. He says, this is not unfortunately something new. We had this Maisa already with Rabbi Akiva. That what? One of the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva got sick and nobody came. Lo nichnasu chachamim levakro. The Gemara says, lo nichnasu chachamim levakro. The nichnas Rabbi Akiva levakro. Rabbi Akiva came to visit. Ubishvil, and if you read the Gemara, there are 2 different ways to read the Gemara. Ubishvil, it's either shekibdu virifzu lefanav chaya. It's either because, why? When Rabbi Akiva came to visit, what happened? Because they saw, wow, Rabbi Akiva is such a chashuva. Rav must be that this Talmud is what? Also very chashuv. Therefore, the nursing staff, what do? They then swept. And because of that, the sick person became alive. That's one way to read it, that it's in the plural, kibdu. What's the other way? Kibdo. That Rabbi Akiva himself came and did what? And he himself swept. He himself swept. Amar Lei, the Talmud of Rabbi Akiva says what? Rabbi, hechi seni. Rabbi, you have what? You've made me alive. Yotza Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva comes, vote this, because of this, and he darshans anybody, call me, she'ein mevaker cholim, ki ilu shafach tamim. Right? It's almost like pikuach nefesh here. If you don't visit the sick, it's as if you've killed. And Kiyota Rav Dimi Amar Kol Mevaker Tachole, the Gemara says in a different way. When Rav Dimi came, anybody who visits the sick, Goreim Lo Sheyichya, causes them to be alive. And a person who doesn't visit the sick, the Gemara says, Goreim Lo Sheyamas, causes them to die. The Gemara says, what is this causing business? My grama, Ilema, does it mean Kol Mevaker Tachole? Mevaker Shalav Rachamim Sheichya. Does it mean that when a person visits the sick, he should be davening, that he should be alive? Because if I don't visit him, then I should be davening that he should die. This is not for now a big medical ethics question. Can I daven for somebody who dies? There's a Ron right over here that talks about when a person unfortunately is in tremendous pain. Are you allowed to daven for them to die? That's not for now, but that's the Ron over here. What comes the concept? For your batteries running low. Shkoyach, good. Shkoyach Rabbani, right on topic. Ella. If you don't visit them, this point we're going to stop. And we're going to see from this story, we have a couple of very important ideas. Number one is the concept of Gadol Eitzel Katan, that Rabbi Akiva himself went, and the Chachamim previously weren't going. We see this concept of, if you're not visiting the sick, it's as if you're killing. But now within the story, we have what? We see in the halacha that what are the components, and this is going to be some of the crux of the shir. What are the components of the mitzvah Bikkur Cholim? I want to now fulfill the mitzvah of Bikkur Cholim. What are the 3 components that we see from this Gemara? And also that the Ramban is going to bring down, that we're going to see this machloket and lead into the halachic ramifications within our shir. What would you say is the mitzvah Bikkur Cholim? Both from the story and from without the story, what would you say? Number 1, visiting. What's the purpose of visiting? So one shot is, and the Ramban adds this, that when you come, it could be the language of Hechi Sani also. You made me feel alive, not physically alive, but the language of the Ramban is Nachas ruach, it made me emotionally feel better. I'm not alone here. Okay, I just saw somebody in my neighborhood, the high school kid got sick, and it was only after a Facebook picture that the father had said, look, my son has been in the hospital for a couple of days. Nobody visited him. Now his friends visit him. Now he's happy. Meaning there was something that was clear that for the days that nobody visited him, he felt very lonely. So that's one level. There's an emotional happiness. What else do you see? Two other very important components. Yeah, Mr. Tolo.
And you see the to make you daven.
Oh. So before we do the davening part, what's the third part? We'll get back to the davening part in a second. What else is there? What else? Who said sweeping? Oriel. The concept of sweeping. What does sweeping mean? Taking care of which type of needs? Physical needs. Taking care of the physical needs. That it could be that Rabbi Akiva himself did that, taking care of his physical needs. The third piece that Mr. Tolo said is daven. And I think that that's going to be my big chiddush for you now within the halacha, that the Ramban is going to learn from this Gemara. That the question comes when in England you say to the person, I wish you better. Right? That's your language that you use. When in America we say, feel better, bro. Are you being yotzei your mitzvah of Bikkur Cholim? To say, feel better. Now you could teach it out and say, feel better means that I'm really davening to Hashem to feel better. Or not. I'm not so sure. It's a little stretch. Meaning there are three components that we have towards Bikkur Cholim that we see from this Gemara. Number one, the concept of physical needs. Number two, the emotional needs. And number three is tefillah. Part and parcel of the mitzvah of Bikkur Cholim is tefillah, to the point that the Ramban says, if you do not daven for a person when you visit the sick, you are not yotzei the mitzvah. Within this comes the backdrop of our first question. The Moshe Feinstein was asked, let's say I can't physically come to the person who is sick. Am I allowed, do I fulfill the mitzvah of Bikkur Cholim via telephone? So what would you say? Okay, good. We have a yes and a no. Gewaltig. That means we're in a good shape. That means I've done my good job. Who says yes and why? Who says yes and why? Narrow. Why do you say yes? Okay. If the goal is to make him feel better, says Mr. Narrow, just a phone call will make him feel better. Okay. Could very well be. I spoke to a friend of mine, it's going to be connected also, who lost his grandmother. I spoke to him on the phone for 3 seconds. Ramosha has a tshuva also about Nicham Avelim on the telephone also. And he felt Nicham Tani. But some of the words I said, just listening to my voice. Could be. Could be. What else? Oscar, what do you want to say? Yeah, you on the yes team or the no team? No. Any other people on the yes team? You were, now you're going back with Oscar. Yeah, the same answer as Mr. Narrow. Oscar, you're representing that you're not Yotzei. Yeah, why? Oh, be interesting. My mother, I have Yortzeit from my father this week. My mother is a little less than a year, and I remember being by her bedside last year and literally flying home on Friday morning and having I was there all week, and then trying to call the doctor, and still, it may not be the same. As much as you think you got the doctor's number, you're trying to say, Oscar saying you don't have that same, once you're there. I was there every single morning after my cup of coffee. I davened at 6:30, went to 7-Eleven, Dunkin' Donuts in Staten Island, got my Dunkin' Donuts, went there. I was there for their interdisciplinary meeting at 7:45. I was there. You can't imagine, if you're there to make sure that they're dealing with the medications correctly or not. Okay, so Oscar is saying, as much as the telephone you might fulfill the emotional side, but the physical side, very difficult. Okay? And how about the tefillah part? What do we say? The tefillah part?
Why not?
Why not? Why not? So tell me why not and tell me why yes.
So why yes? Because we're davening to Hashem.
Okay.
Right there.
Good. And why not? Why not?
Doesn't know.
What do you mean doesn't know? You're saying he doesn't fully understand the gravity. Who else said that? About emotional? Who said that? Judah. Yeah, what do you got? A person, you can argue the other way also. If he sees you davening for him, it's going to make him maybe feel worse. Maybe. Oh, he's davening for me. That's all there. Well, Oriel, what do you want to say? Mhm.
But the whole be in front of them, not be tefillah.
Oh, so if you're in front of him, then what's going to happen? Who's going to feel it? I was talking about maybe the chol, it's a little embarrassing. But for you, Eino Dome, Ramosha has this. He says, Eino Dome, Shemiot Tariyah. If you're there seeing the chol, you're going to what? You're going to feel it more. And we know, we're going to get to at the end of Parshas Vayechi, that the Shechina is Lamala, Me'arosh. Therefore, there's a more visceral Shechina, whatever that means, on top of the sick. Therefore, your tefillah is going to be better. So therefore, Moshe Feinstein says, even though you may not be able to fulfill all of them, but still, obviously as much as possible, you should try to what? To go and visit. But, we can't say it's not all or nothing. Therefore, he says on the telephone, you might be Yotzei, the mitzvah of Bikkur Cholim, but you have not fulfilled your chovah completely. Because there's more to it. Because we said, you should be trying as much as possible to actually go and visit. Rav Asher Weiss in the Minchas Asher disagreed. He said it's true. You might be Yotzei the mitzvah of Gemilut Chasadim, the concept that you on the telephone. It's Gemilut Chasad. But Bikkur Cholim is not one of these three. But Bikkur Cholim is all three of these components in one. And therefore, if you are just on the telephone, and I would say even through FaceTime, it's still not the same. Still not the same, both in the feeling of, even in emotion, even for sure in tefillah, it's just not the same. And that's the machlokas between Rav Asher Weiss and Rav Moshe. That's Arkan. We see the concept of how important tefillah is. And within this, I want to come and explain some of the things that we've said till now also. Before we get to the last machlokas between the Rambam and Ravas. We started off the shir, and we said that the She'otot Rav Chai Gaon says that what? Says that you should go visit the sick with how many people? With 2 people. So we had said that it's possible, and this is what the Tzitz Eliezer said, that's based on a pasuk. It says Yelchu, plural. However, the Rav Asher Weiss brings down a sefer from Rav Menachem Bennett to explain that if you understand that part of the essence of Bikkur Cholim is davening, and we know there's a concept called Tfilat Hatzibur, that's with a minion, but then there's a concept called Tfilah Birabim. And therefore, it's possible that the reason why Rav Chai Gaon was saying that you should go with 2 people is because the minimum of Rabim is 2. And therefore, that's why you should be going with 2 people, because your tefillah is going to be more effective. Third piece, we had said that the Gemara says, Bikkur Cholim ein lo shiur. The Gemara says that according to Abaye, that he said what? He said, Afilu gadol eitzel katan. So the question that the Rishonim ask is, what is this chiddush that Afilu gadol eitzel katan? Why would I think not? Why would I think not Bikkur Cholim? So the Shita Mekubetzes, for example, is on the sources, said that what? What's the reason? Because we know by Hashavas Aveda we have a p'tur. What's the p'tur? Of Zakin Le'nofik Kvodo. If it's not according to their dignity, then you could be pater. So maybe I'll say the same idea. It's not according to my dignity. If it's not according to my dignity, I would think that what? You should be pater. I'm older. He's younger. I shouldn't go visit. Comes the Shita Mekubetzes to explain where do we learn the mitzvah of Bikkur Cholim from. We learn the mitzvah of Bikkur Cholim from Vayar Ilav Hashem Be'elonei Mamrei Mahu Bevaker Cholet. And so we see that this whole concept of Einol Lefi Kvodo, it does not apply. Meaning, again, we had started off the shir. What's the nafkamina if it's for the imitacho day of Sota Daf Yudalad versus the other ones? Here's a very big nafkamina, because we see that if it would be the other sources, I would not know this whole concept of Zakin Lefi Kvodo. It's only, where do I learn it from? I learned it from that HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself showed that he's not within his cover. If I take it one step further, if we were establishing that a very important facet of Bikkur Cholim is what? Is tefillah. So therefore now I can understand even more what? I can understand even more this idea about Afilu Gadol Eitzel Katan. Why is that, Mr. Narrow? Thank you. Why is that? Because, what's the pshat, Mr. Schwartz? Because it's tefillah. Could there be even better? If I'm a gadol, then what? Even Afilu Gadol Eitzel Katan, because why? Because maybe his tefillah will be even stronger. To be able to go you've had more life experience, whether gadol means a zaken and wisdom, but maybe that's the chiddush also. It's not only that it's eino lefi kvodo according to the Shita Mekubet said it, but since it's the din tefillah, there's no such thing. As we know, everybody's tefillah has a tremendous koach. So if we've explained the Shiltot to Rabbi Chaygo, and we've explained the source that coming from Vayera Ilav Hashem, that's maybe why it's zaken and lefi kvodo, maybe that's the chiddush of gadol afilu katan, gadol it's a katan. With this, I want to bring down this next machlokas that comes up, which is a machlokas between the Rambam and the Radbaz, which is brought down in Hilchos of the Perek Yudal, Halacha Zayin, which is if I ask you, which one, Mr. Selesny, I have a choice between Bikkur Cholim and Nichum Avelim. Which one would you choose? Bikkur Cholim. Why would you choose Bikkur Cholim?
Because it makes a person better.
Because to make a person better. Who would say, anybody say Nichum Avelim? Does everyone agree Bikkur Cholim? Come on. Yes.
Also for people as well.
Now what? How you gonna make?
You can make the feel better.
Oh, you can make the other feel better. So then it's 1 versus 1, right? So which wins? Oh, comes Pifko with a knockout and says what? What can happen? You can save somebody's life by Bikkur Cholim. Therefore, that should be paramount. Sounds good. Anybody have a rebuttal? Says the Rambam. In Perek Yudalin Halacha Zayin, the Rambam. Kavod Hameis. Getting it. Not bad. Says the Rambam. What? Oh, Alex says somebody else can take care of the sick. Nice. Good. Says the Rambam Yeira Eli. The Rambam. Anytime he says Yeira Eli, that means he's saying his svar. It's his svar. It's his opinion. Yeroeli shenechamas avelim kodemes lebikkur cholim. What happens, Mr. Eagle? Says the Rambam that what? Tolo? Says what? Nichum avelim comes before bikkur cholim. Why, Mr. Melman? Because nichum avelim is a gemilos chesed with what? With the Chaim and with the Mason. What does he say? Double your trouble. Double benefit. By coming and doing Nichum Avelim, it's both a chesed for the person that's alive, and it's also a comfort for the neshama. Says the Radbaz, Mr. Pifko. Radbaz comes and says, Im lo she'amro Rabbeinu, if the Rambam wouldn't have said this, Hayiti Omer Ibcha. I would have said the opposite. The Bikkur Cholim Kodem. She yesh bo ki ilu shovek l'chalim, from the Gemara that we said. That what? That he Davka quotes from the Gemara. He says, I would have said that Bikkur Cholim is paramount and should take precedence. Why? Because the Gemara we saw from Rabdini, Kol mevaker et hacholeh gorein lo sheyichyeh, and Nichum Avelim les bechad miha. Doesn't have this. So, how do we understand this machlokes, the Rambam and the Radbaz? The Rambam clearly says that you have these two things, and therefore it's a stronger mitzvah. Now, Rav Moshe and his tshuva here explained it was in the sources also. The Rambam, how does he explain it? He says that it's possible that the Rambam only says that Nichum Avelim, like Mr. Pifko said, is only if I know that somebody else is taking, what Alex said, then I know somebody else is taking care of the sick. So what's Pshat in the Radbaz? Well, the Radbaz says what the Pshat is. So it's Pikuach Nefesh, but the Rav Moshe goes a step further. Because according to the Radbaz, let's say I know somebody's taking care of the sick. Would the Radbaz agree that Nichum Avelim takes precedence? No. Why not? Yeah, what do you say, Lasman?
Maybe that your effect on the person who's sick would be greater than something happening.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So before what you say, because that's what I'm going to get to, which is the theme of the whole shir. But before you that, Rav Moshe said, because maybe what's going to happen? You're saying you know somebody's taking care of the sick, but maybe this time they're taking care of the sick, but the next time they won't take care of the sick. You just don't know. Low plug. Every single time you're going to darshan out, is there a person there or not? You need to have proper halachic categories of what to do. But then Rav Moshe says what Mr. Lussman said. And he said, it's true there might be a person that's taking care of the sick. But Eino Dome, you don't know, both in quantity and quality, of you going there and going Eitzah Achole, what your tefillah could be doing. And that's what the Ramban quoted the source. He didn't quote the source. He quoted the source that we saw from the Adarim. That says what? In Moshe Amar Rabbeinu Hayiti Omer Ibcha the Bikkur Cholim Kodem Sheyesh Bo Ki Ilu Shofech Damim. Meaning, he says Pikuach Nefesh. What's a Pikuach Nefesh? Nefesh. Somebody else might be there. But your tefillah, when you're coming and visiting the sick, is Eino Domen. So we see what we wanted to learn from this shiur is the importance of understanding the mitzvah of Bikkur Cholim, to understand the three components of it. And to the point that the Ramban even says that if you don't daven, you're not yotzei. Rav Moshe himself says not 100%. But we see that even in the Ben Adam L'Chaveiro mitzvah of what? Of Bikkur Cholim, we learn how important the tefillah is not just something that's, if you're from, you do that. Sure, you're from because you want to be able to the mitzvah. But to understand that part and parcel of the mitzvah is tefillah. We pointed it out in 4 or 5 different ways. The concept of that, like the Shiltus Rav Achai Gom, that you should go with 2 people. That it's afilu gadol eitzel kadmon. Understanding the Ramban's Shita that says that it should take precedence over Nichum Avelim. The concept of the Ribbon Shalom coming and saying what? That it's mahu. So it's your type of ability to go, and it's our responsibility. Even when we're in yeshiva, where we have this concept of normally we have al Torah, val avodah, val gemilut chasadim, and normally it's b'shima ashram. And 100%, your focus this year has to be, as the Marach or as the Ruah says, you have to specialize, and we're specializing in limud Torah. That's what we're doing this year. To be able to come, normally you need to have that proper balance. And this year in yeshiva, your balance is to specialize in limud Torah. At the same time, we know that still part of it has to be this mitzvah Bikkur Cholim. That's why it's beautiful that Daniel Moses and Ezra Levy has very much built in to their program, working very much hard, that people will find a half an hour, 45 minutes a week to be able to go and do Bikkur Cholim. Because it's part of understanding what you have to do as a person who's from, that it's something that you're imitating Hashem. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, that just like I do it, you have to do it. And Be'ezrat Hashem, through the shir, we'll strengthen ourselves to be able, number one, to have a refuah shlema for your great-grandmother, that all the psuim and the cholim should have a refuah shlema. Be'ezrat Hashem will understand this very, very important mitzvah of not only going to visit, but being able to make you feel better, the emotional side, the physical side, and also, as important, is the tefillah. What we're going to do now is we're going to bench, and then we're going to daven, and you guys are going to go to the concert.